Time now for our political panel, and joining us live down the line from Parliament today is ACT leader David Seymour and Greens co-leader Chlöe Swarbrick. Good morning to you both, side by side there.
Morena.
Good morning.
Good morning. Chlöe, I'd just like to start with you if I can. Both New Zealand First and National have taken a big swipe at the Greens' promise to roll back any consent given to hard rock mining. Revoking those things, I guess it's a bold move to put it out there well ahead of the election, but what's your response to the criticism that you're the most anti-region, anti-jobs and anti-economy political party we've ever had in Parliament?
The Greens are the only political party that at present has put a fully costed evidence-based plan on the table to actually create 40,000 good green jobs and to revitalise our regions. I'd invite everybody to just Google the Green Industrial Strategy alongside our green budget, where we've shown how we can pay for these things if we are to fairly tax the wealthiest people in this country. But if we can just take a step back and talk about those fast-track consents, right? They have not yet actually been granted. So what we've done as the Greens is put a clear, consistent and principled line in the sand and said that if the government does want to move ahead with granting these fast-track consents, which have been overwhelmingly opposed by 90% of New Zealanders who submitted at Select Committee, which sideline the climate, conservation and community voices, well, those are relatively illegitimate in the way that they have been granted, so therefore we will end up revoking them.
Are they firm
and it's kind of a bit
lines,
of a message, I guess.
Is that a firm line?
It's us trying...
Is that a firm line that you're putting there, or is that a negotiable one if you're entering into a coalition agreement?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. These consents have not yet been granted, and what we're saying is that were they to be granted through this illegitimate process that this government has set up, then we would revoke them. And ultimately, it's down to New Zealanders to decide. If you want an economy that supports both people and the planet, instead of exhausting and exploiting both, then the Green Party is on your side. Unfortunately, the government that we have at the moment is trying to sell New Zealanders more of the poison as though it is the cure, and I think New Zealanders can see through that.
David, I'm obviously fascinated to hear what you make of that. I imagine that you're quite a fan of the fast-track process, given the support that ACT's given it.
Well, I am, because ultimately we need jobs in New Zealand, and we don't need jobs where you have a fancy document that says you're basically going to find some people with money, tax it, and then create essentially fake jobs. If they were real jobs, then they would generate wealth and people would be paid for them. These guys, as they just said, want to tax other people and create jobs which aren't real. New Zealand's been down that track before. It doesn't work.
This government will just cut them.
But there's two more important issues here. Number one is when I talk to people up and down the country, whatever sector they're in, they want continuity, they want certainty, they want to know that if you make a plan, if you save your money, if you invest it, if you have a go in New Zealand, then actually it's going to work out for you, or at least the government won't pull the rug out. Now, when you have someone say, oh, well, people made email submissions to Select Committee, therefore we're just going to change the law that was made by a parliament. In fact, not just change the law, but take away consents that people had. That terrifies anyone who's thinking of investing in this country. It's flip-flop on steroids. And I can't emphasise this enough. When New Zealand First and Labour and the Greens, when they said there will be no more oil and gas exploration permits, they didn't actually cancel any existing ones. Nonetheless, the shockwaves that sent through and the discouragement of people investing in that sector is one of the reasons why electricity prices are high right now, because you can't get people to invest in that industry. It's too risky. You don't know what the government's going to do. They're now going a step further and saying, we will actually cancel permits you already have. So in terms of stability...
Well, they're not permits that they already have, technically. I think the point is they haven't been issued yet, so this is putting them on notice, right?
Well, they're saying if they are issued, they'll cancel them. So you don't know if you've got a contract in New Zealand if it's actually safe. That's death to an economy. But the second part is there's a hypocrisy to it, because when Chlöe Swarbrick flies business class to London, she's dependent on mining. When people print stuff on paper, those things in the paper toner are printed, your furniture, your jewellery, your car, everything about life today depends on mining. What Chlöe's really saying is, we want all that stuff, we just want the jobs and the mining to happen elsewhere, and that is total hypocrisy.
You're regretting that one
flight, if I may respond, Garth.
Yes, of course.
Oh, no, look, I guess I could get into all of the ad hominem attacks, but I think New Zealanders are pretty bloody sick of politicians just going at each other on a personal level. So let's just come back down to the facts. We live in the world that we want to change. right now, a lot of the economic defaults are incredibly harmful to people and planet. There's huge amounts of hidden costs in our supply chains, whether it is in the form of putting pressure on wages or whether it is in desecrating our natural environment. The Greens have always been crystal clear that we want to change that economy. And I think New Zealanders can see that over the last 40 years of successive governments deciding to not invest in our public infrastructure and in our services, but also to hand over the keys of our economy to large corporations and speculators, that hard-working New Zealanders are actually the ones being screwed over. And the Greens have been crystal clear and principled, evidence-based and fully costed in the policies that we have put forward, which has shown how we can transform this economy. We used to make things in this country, and we can do it again. We can invest in and create renewable distributed electricity. We can create tens of thousands of public houses, and we can reduce the cost of living, reduce our climate changing emissions, and also increase New Zealanders' quality of life.
I think what New Zealanders are a little tired of is just one soundbite being ticked off after another. There's nothing in what she's just said that actually says, here is how we would do something practically to make sure it happens.
I've just told you through our budget and our fiscal strategy and our industrial strategy, which are all available in detail online.
Soundbites. I mean, what we practically need to do is make it easier to get resource consent to build homes. You see, so often builders will say it takes twice as long to get permission to build something as actually build it. That's why people are living in poverty. That's why it's hard to get a house. That's why there's a generation who thinks we don't have a future here. What we're doing with resource management reform, you know, it's been going 35 years. Everyone said they're going to do it. I'm really proud to be in a party that's actually going to replace the Resource Management Act. And it looks like we're going to halve the number of consents required so people can do stuff on their own property. If it doesn't affect the environment, doesn't affect anyone else, they can just do it. Now, if you want to see more homes getting built, that's the kind of change you've got to make. If you
I feel like we've been going 35 years on this one as well.
Easily, that's what you've got to do. These are the practical things required.
Yeah.
I feel like we've been going 35 years on this
otherwise
one as well. I just want to pick up something.
I'd refer people back to the ACT Party's history and the inequality that ACT Party policy has created in this country.
David, New Zealand was given Fossil of the Day award at COP30 because the government backtracked on methane emission targets. I'm sure that's probably not going to be a worry for you, but is it a wider concern that maybe we're not seen as pulling our weight?
No, I think what's important is that New Zealand farmers are some of the most efficient in the world, if not the most efficient. They can produce protein with less emissions into the atmosphere than others. So the question is pretty simple. Do we want the New Zealand government to put stringent regulations in place that actually put them out of business so the customers, those 40 million people, can start getting their protein from other farmers elsewhere in the world, and we end up worse off economically? But also, because those other farmers elsewhere emit more into the atmosphere, those customers get the same food with higher emissions. I mean, it's actually shooting ourselves in both feet. And again, you have to take a practical approach. It's like this with a lot of things. I mean, I grew up in Northland, near the Portland Cement Company. You know, that has 120 jobs. They produce cement. We could put them out of business if we decided to be tough on their emissions. Instead, we're respecting that they've made massive efforts to reduce their emissions to be more efficient. We're not going to put them out of business so that New Zealanders who go to Bunnings buy cement from Vietnam, where they have no climate policy whatsoever, but it is cheaper. So this is about trying to find a way.
This is about onshoring things. I'm interested.
And keep our efforts on.
Yeah. This is about the onshoring the emissions.
Continuing. This is the choice, right? Chlöe can talk about poverty or she can talk about climate, but you actually have to be sensible and practical to balance the two.
Yeah. I mean, we could do, if we wanted to address what David was talking about, something called carbon border adjustments, whereby we effectively price in that kind of carbon leakage, where it is effectively cheaper to produce other things offshore, but it ends up resulting in higher carbon kind of emissions leakage.
You're talking about a new tax on everything New Zealanders consume. So
I'm actually not, if I'm allowed to talk.
Half the time I get Chlöe Swarbrick, who's worried about poverty, worried about the cost of living. Half the time I get Chlöe, who wants to destroy the economy, rip up contracts and put new taxes on them. And you've got to choose.
Let's hear which one we've got today, shall we, David?
Yeah. So I guess, do you want to ask a question of me, Garth? Because I can't quite recall where we were at before David jumped in.
I think we've got both, Chloe's.
Okay.
I think we've had plenty. Thank you very much both for your time this morning. Really, really appreciate it.